gosh, dude, what in the world is that, bro?
Insane snake tornado caught on video. It twists through the sky like a living serpent, stretching impossibly thin as it coils across the horizon.
No! No, oh my god! No! Driveway, we have to.
This rare snake tornado, captured in Iowa, is a perfect example of one of nature's strangest and most misunderstood phenomena, the rope tornado. Its narrow body may look fragile, but inside that twisting column are winds that can tear apart anything in their path. The footage shows a sliver of swirling chaos dangling from a dark supercell thunderstorm, gliding across open farmland. Its movement is hypnotic, bending, tightening, loosening, almost as if it has a mind of its own. That serpentine motion happens because the vortex is literally being stretched and contorted by shifting winds inside the storm above it. Rope tornadoes earn their name from their thin, rope-like appearance. Often they show up in the final stage of a tornado's life cycle. As the storm weakens and stops feeding the funnel with warm air, the vortex gets stretched out. It becomes longer, narrower, and more twisted. But the danger doesn't fade just because the tornado looks smaller. When air is forced into a tighter space, rotation speeds up like a skater spinning faster when pulling in their arms.
Tornado's crossing the road right in front of us. It's tearing something apart right now. Big power flashes. Shoot, I think a semi got flipped.
Hey, tornado, are you okay? This is Frank. Hey, there's a big hail coming. We gotta go.
A rope tornado can still uproot trees, flip vehicles, and destroy homes if it drops into a populated area. To understand how something this slender becomes so violent, you have to start inside the storm that creates it. Tornadoes are born in supercells, massive, rotating thunderstorms powered by rising warm air and cold air crashing in from above. When horizontal spinning air in the atmosphere is lifted upright by the storm, a mesocyclone forms, a huge, rotating engine in the sky. Sometimes that rotation tightens and drops toward the ground, forming a tornado. When the supercell finally begins to collapse or shift, the tornado stretches into its rope stage, the moment when it becomes its fastest, most erratic, and often most visually stunning. Despite their elegance, rope tornadoes are unpredictable and extremely dangerous. Their narrow footprint gives little warning of where they will strike next. They can suddenly whip sideways, curl back on themselves, or snap apart, all while maintaining deadly power. The 2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami, a triple disaster. On March 11, 2011, the world literally changed. The Earth's axis shifted. The length of a day was permanently shortened, and the entire nation of Japan was dragged 8 feet closer to America. All of this happened in just 6 minutes. It began at 2:46 p.m. on a perfectly ordinary Friday afternoon, when a low rumble under the Pacific Ocean escalated into the most powerful earthquake in Japan's history, and it was only the beginning of a triple disaster. The Earth shakes. It began with a low rumble, a familiar tremor in a nation accustomed to the Earth's movements. But this was different. The shaking didn't stop. It grew and grew and grew, escalating into a violent, incomprehensible roar that lasted for 6 excruciating minutes. It was the Great East Japan Earthquake, a magnitude 9.1 undersea megathrust event, the most powerful quake to ever strike Japan and the 4th most powerful ever recorded on Earth. The quake's epicenter was located 45 miles east of the Tohoku region, under the Pacific Ocean. Here, at the Japan Trench, the colossal Pacific tectonic plate pushes relentlessly westward, sliding underneath the continental plate that holds Japan. For more than a millennium, a massive section of this plate boundary had been stuck fast, snagged by immense friction. As the Pacific plate continued to drive forward at a rate of 3 inches per year, unimaginable stress accumulated, bending the overriding plate and storing centuries of energy like a colossal spring being wound tighter and tighter. On March 11th, that spring didn't just snap, it exploded. The rupture unleashed this pent-up energy in a matter of minutes, triggering a cataclysmic upheaval. The force was so immense, so profound, it had planetary consequences. The seafloor near the epicenter was shoved upwards by 23 feet and eastwards by an astonishing 160 feet. The entire main island of Honshu was physically dragged 8 feet to the east. The sudden redistribution of the planet's mass altered the Earth's rotation, causing our world to spin faster and shortening the length of a day by 1.8 microseconds. It even shifted the very axis on which our planet wobbles by an estimated 6.5 inches. In sprawling cities, the world became a fluid, terrifying place. In Tokyo, 230 miles from the epicenter, skyscrapers designed with legendary earthquake resilience swayed like giant metronomes. Across the country, Japan's iconic Shinkansen bullet trains, traveling at nearly 200 miles per hour, performed flawlessly. Their emergency systems, triggered by the first seismic P-waves, automatically cut the power and engaged brakes, bringing every train to a safe halt without a single derailment, saving thousands of lives. It was a triumph of engineering in the face of nature's raw fury. But for all its terrifying power, the earthquake was only the overture. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, the violent lurching of the seafloor had displaced a massive volume of water, setting in motion a far more indiscriminate killer. Along hundreds of miles of coastline, the deafening roar of the earth was soon replaced by an eerie silence, and then a new, more dreadful sound, the piercing wail of tsunami sirens. The real monster was on its way. The wave. The tsunami traveled at the speed of a jetliner, around 435 miles per hour, across the open ocean. Residents in coastal cities like Sendai had as little as 8 to 10 minutes of warning before the first waves made landfall. Around 50 minutes after the quake, the monster reached the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. A towering wall of water, later measured at over 40 feet high, crashed over the plant's seawall, a barrier built to withstand waves of only 33 feet. The sheer scale of the tsunami stunned scientists. It was far larger than seismologists would have predicted from the earthquake's magnitude alone. The mystery of this disproportionate energy was solved when scientists drilled into the fault zone. They made a startling discovery. The colossal 160-foot slip was lubricated by a thin, slippery layer of clay deep within the trench. This geologic anomaly had essentially greased the wheels of the fault, allowing for a sudden, catastrophic release of energy far beyond what was thought possible. This unprecedented collapse of the seafloor acted like a giant paddle, thrusting the ocean upwards and generating a series of waves of almost unimaginable power. In some narrow bays along the Miyagi prefecture, the rushing water would be funneled and amplified, reaching a staggering, horrifying height of 133 feet. It was a force of total annihilation. Entire towns were simply erased from existence. In Rikuzentakata, a city of over 23,000 people, a 21-foot-high seawall that was meant to protect them was effortlessly overtopped. The wave washed away 80% of the city's homes and claimed the lives of nearly 8% of its population. The wave swept cars, ships, houses, and entire buildings inland for up to 6 miles, creating a churning, black soup of mud, timber, and debris that scoured the landscape clean. Bustling coastal communities were transformed into featureless, waterlogged plains of ruin. The human cost was devastating. The Great East Japan earthquake and the tsunami it created would ultimately claim the lives of nearly 20,000 people, with over 2,500 never found. Over 90% of the fatalities were due to drowning. It was the costliest natural disaster in recorded history, with economic losses estimated at $360 billion. But as the black water surged over the coast, it also breached the defenses of a facility that was supposed to be impervious, triggering the third, final, and most enduring act of this triple disaster. The poison. At precisely 2:46 p.m., the moment the earthquake struck, the 3 active nuclear reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi plant, Units 1, 2, and 3, performed a successful automatic shutdown just as they were designed to do. The seismic jolt also severed the plant's connection to the external power grid. Again, the safety systems worked. Emergency diesel generators, housed in the reactor building's basements, roared to life, powering the critical pumps that circulated cooling water to carry away the immense residual heat from the reactor cores. For 41 minutes, it seemed that Japanese engineering had withstood the test. Then the tsunami hit. The 40-foot wave overwhelmed the plant's defenses, flooding the site. It swamped the basements where the crucial backup generators were located, drowning them in corrosive seawater and shorting out the electrical switchgear. Suddenly, the plant was plunged into a station blackout. No external power and no internal backup power. The control rooms went dark. All that remained were emergency DC batteries. But they would only last for a matter of hours and could only power minimal instrumentation. Without a constant flow of cooling water, the intense decay heat from the shutdown fuel rods would relentlessly boil away the water in the reactor cores. Once the water was gone, the rods themselves would begin to overheat, rupture, and melt. A meltdown was no longer a risk. It was an inevitability. At 7:03 p.m., with fuel in Unit 1 believed to be exposed and melting, the Japanese government declared a nuclear emergency. Evacuation orders began, initially for those within a 2-kilometer radius. But as the night wore on and the situation grew more desperate, the zone kept expanding, first to 3 kilometers, then 10, and finally 20, forcing around 160,000 people to flee their homes in a state of confusion and fear. Inside the darkened, powerless control rooms, engineers from the Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, fought a desperate and losing battle, using car batteries to try and power their instruments. By that evening, the nuclear fuel in Reactor 1 had become exposed as water boiled off, and the core began to sustain damage. Pressure inside the reactor's primary containment vessel soared. To prevent a massive explosion that would rupture the vessel, operators made a fateful decision. They had to vent radioactive steam into the atmosphere. It was a terrible choice, but the alternative was far worse. On March 12th, the nightmare scenario began to unfold in earnest. Despite the venting, a buildup of hydrogen gas, a byproduct of the exposed, overheating zirconium fuel cladding reacting with steam, led to a colossal explosion that blew the roof and walls off the Reactor 1 building. The crisis was now escalating uncontrollably. The next day, the emergency cooling system for Reactor 3 failed, and its core, too, began to suffer damage. March 14th brought another devastating hydrogen explosion, this time tearing apart the Reactor 3 building. Then, on March 15th, a third explosion rocked Reactor 2, likely damaging its primary containment vessel, followed by a fire at Reactor 4, where a pool of spent but still intensely hot fuel rods was also overheating without coolant. Radiation levels near the plant spiked to 400 millisieverts per hour, a dose that would deliver a lifetime's worth of normal background radiation in just a few minutes. TEPCO was finally forced to admit the horrifying truth. Meltdowns were in progress in Reactors 1, 2, and 3. A small group of workers, later nicknamed the Fukushima 50 by the media, remained on site. In reality, the group was larger and rotated in shifts, but their task was the same: a near-suicidal mission to get water onto the reactors. They crawled through pitch-black labyrinths of equipment, breathing through respirators and facing lethal radiation, constant aftershocks, and the threat of more explosions. They subsisted on dry biscuits as they worked to contain a disaster no one had ever planned for. In a desperate, last-ditch effort, military helicopters began dropping seawater onto the damaged buildings, and fire engines were brought in to spray the reactors from the ground. Slowly, painstakingly, a new power line was conducted to the crippled site. On March 20th, external power was finally restored to some of the plant systems, allowing more stable cooling pumps to be brought back online. But by then, the environmental damage was done. In late March, highly contaminated water was discovered leaking directly from the plant into the Pacific Ocean. By April, levels of radioactive iodine-131 in the sea were measured at over 7.5 million times the legal limit. On April 12th, Japanese authorities officially raised the severity of the Fukushima accident to level 7 on the International Nuclear Event Scale, the highest possible level. A major accident previously assigned to only one other event in history, Chernobyl. The story of Fukushima is a powerful reminder of nature's awesome power and the profound responsibility that comes with our most advanced technologies. To understand more about the engineering, science, and human stories behind the world's most significant events, make sure you subscribe. The Great East Japan Earthquake of 2011 wasn't just one disaster, but three, each cascading into the next with devastating results. First came the ground-shaking terror of a record-breaking earthquake. Then came the unstoppable force of a tsunami, born from a uniquely violent geological event. And finally, the silent, invisible poison of a nuclear meltdown, a crisis that would haunt Japan for generations. The combined death toll from the earthquake and tsunami was staggering, with nearly 20,000 dead or missing. While the nuclear accident itself caused no direct radiation fatalities, the stress of the chaotic evacuations and the loss of homes and livelihoods led to thousands of additional, disaster-related deaths in the years that followed. More than a decade later, tens of thousands of people still have not been able to return to their homes. An exclusion zone still surrounds the plant, a ghost landscape of abandoned towns being slowly reclaimed by nature. The cleanup of the Fukushima Daiichi facility is one of the most complex, expensive, and dangerous environmental remediation projects in human history. It is a monumental task projected to take another 30 to 40 years to complete. The removal of the nearly 900 tons of melted nuclear fuel, a toxic, intensely radioactive substance known as corium, is an unprecedented challenge that will require technologies not yet invented. Investigations later revealed that the disaster was not merely an act of nature, but a preventable catastrophe. It was a failure of imagination and oversight, stemming from a critical underestimation of the tsunami risk and crucial design flaws, such as placing the essential backup generators in unwaterproofed basements. The legacy of March 11, 2011, is a story of profound loss. But it is also a testament to human resilience, a catalyst for a global reevaluation of nuclear safety, and a permanent, humbling reminder that even the most advanced societies are ultimately at the mercy of the planet we call home.